Hi, I'm Bella Perez, 33 years old, a marketing manager in Denver. I've always considered myself fortunate. Good job, decent apartment, and what I thought was a loving family. My younger brother Ethan is 28, and my parents, Linda and Robert, have always been involved in our lives, maybe too involved. As it turns out, I always believed family meant unconditional support and protection. That belief shattered the night I overheard a decision that could have cost me my life. Standing outside the emergency room, I heard my parents decide to take my kidney for Ethan without my consent. What they didn't know was that I was awake, and I had a plan. Here's how I took back control and changed our family forever. Growing up, our family dynamic was clear from an early age. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who always did what was expected. Ethan was different, charming, effortlessly popular, and somehow always the center of my parents' universe. When he scored a B on a test, there were celebrations. When I brought home straight A's, it was simply expected. "Bella always does well in school," my mother would say dismissively. "It's just how she is." I remember my high school graduation, standing on stage as valedictorian. I scanned the audience, finding my family in the fifth row. My father was checking his watch. My mother was helping Ethan with something on his phone. Neither looked up when my name was called. That pattern continued into adulthood. I pursued marketing with a single-minded focus, working my way up from intern to marketing manager at Horizon Enterprises in just 6 years. Meanwhile, Ethan bounced between careers: photographer, app developer, cryptocurrency expert, each new venture funded primarily by our parents. "Your brother is an entrepreneur," my father would explain. "He needs capital to get started. You've always been the stable one, Bella." That stability became my prison. Every family gathering turned into a showcase of Ethan's latest pursuits, while my promotions and achievements were footnotes, if mentioned at all. July 12th, 2018 remains vivid in my memory. I just put a down payment on my first new car when my mother called. "Bella, honey, we need to talk about Ethan." Those words always preceded a request, usually financial. "He's starting a new business, a tech startup with incredible potential." "What happened to the photography studio?" I asked. "That was just a stepping stone. This is his real passion." The conversation ended with me transferring $10,000 from my savings to Ethan's account. My car down payment would have to wait another 6 months. "You're an angel," my mother said. "We'd ask for a loan ourselves, but with your father's retirement planning." The startup failed within 3 months. The money was never mentioned again. December 5th, 2019 was our family Christmas dinner. I just secured the Westridge account, a $1 million client that had boosted my standing at Horizon. "I have some news," I said, as we passed around the roast turkey. "I landed the Westridge account. It's the biggest client our department has ever—" "Speaking of news," my father interrupted, raising his glass, "Ethan has been approached by investors for his new app." The table erupted in questions and congratulations. My news evaporated like steam from the gravy boat. Later, as I helped my mother with dishes, I tried again. "The Westridge account is a pretty big deal. Mom, I might be up for a director position next year." She glanced at me, hands deep in soapy water. "That's nice, dear. Why can't you be more excited for your brother, though? He's finally finding his path, like Ethan." "You mean like Ethan?" I corrected. "That's what I said." She handed me a dripping plate. "Sometimes I think you're too focused on yourself, Bella." These subtle dismissals accumulated over years, building an invisible wall between me and my family. Yet I kept showing up, kept hoping for recognition, kept playing the role of the supportive daughter and sister. March 15th, 2021 was my breaking point, or should have been. I'd finally decided to stand up for myself, to refuse another loan for Ethan's latest venture. "We sacrificed everything for you kids," my mother said, tears welling. "Everything, and now, when Ethan needs just a little help—" "I've given him over $30,000 in the past 3 years," I said quietly. My father's face darkened. "We don't keep score in this family, Bella. That's not how love works." It feels like you're keeping score of everything I don't do for him. You're too sensitive, my mother sighed. We just want what's best for the family. I left with a promise to think about it. 2 days later, I transferred $5,000 to Ethan. It was easier than enduring another family dinner of cold shoulders and pointed silences. But something shifted in me that day. I began to create distance, to build a life they couldn't touch. I worked harder, earned promotions, and started a side consulting business that I told no one about. I invested aggressively, lived frugally, and watched my net worth grow while maintaining the appearance of living paycheck to paycheck whenever my family inquired. Still in that tiny apartment? My mother would ask. You should find a roommate to split costs. I'd nod and change the subject, never mentioning that I owned the building. By 2023, I had a secret empire. Pinnacle Marketing Group, my side business, was generating 6 figures annually. I had equity in 2 Denver startups worth a combined $1.8 million. My tiny apartment had been paid off, and I had $750,000 in savings earmarked for expansion opportunities, all hidden from my family, who still saw me as the reliable daughter who could help when Ethan needed another bailout. Then came October 2nd, 2024, the day everything changed. The call came at 6:43 p.m., my mother, hysterical. Ethan's in the hospital. His kidneys are failing. We need you to come right away. I arrived at Denver General by 7:15, finding my parents in the waiting room. My mother's mascara had created dark rivers down her cheeks. My father paced, his normally immaculate shirt rumpled and untucked. What happened? I asked. Through broken sentences, they explained. Ethan had been hiding his health problems. Years of uncontrolled high blood pressure had damaged his kidneys. He needed a transplant. Soon. They're testing him now, my father said, to confirm. We waited in tense silence. A doctor appeared at 8:05 p.m., confirming what they'd feared. Ethan needed a kidney transplant within months to avoid dialysis. Family members are often the best donors, the doctor explained. We'll need to test compatibility. Test Bella first, my mother said immediately. She's always been healthy. The doctor looked at me. Are you willing to be tested? Before I could answer, my mother added, Of course she is. She's Ethan's sister. The implication was clear. My consent was assumed. My kidney already promised. I agreed to preliminary testing, which included blood work and a mild sedative to help with my obvious anxiety. The sedative made me drowsy, and I was placed in a small room to rest while they processed initial results. I must have fallen asleep, because when I woke, it was dark outside the window. The clock read 8:17 p.m. I heard voices outside my door, my parents, and what sounded like a hospital administrator. The preliminary results look promising for compatibility, the administrator was saying. Thank God, my mother replied. When can we schedule the surgery? Well, that's premature. We need to conduct more thorough testing, and of course, discuss everything with Bella. Organ donation is entirely voluntary. There was a pause, then my father's voice, lower but still audible. She'll do it. She has to. Robert, the administrator said firmly, I need to make absolutely clear that this is your daughter's choice. Pressuring a family member is unethical and potentially illegal. You don't understand, my mother interjected. We have to save Ethan. Bella doesn't understand yet, but it's for the family. She'll come around, my father added. It's the only option. I'm sorry, but I can't continue this conversation, the administrator said. When Bella wakes up, we'll discuss her options. With her. I heard footsteps retreating, then my mother's hushed voice. She won't say no. I'll make sure of it. If she hesitates, my father replied, we'll remind her of everything we've done for her. She owes us this. My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. Sweat broke out across my forehead and palms. They were discussing my body, my organ, my health, as if I had no say, as if I were nothing more than a spare parts repository for Ethan. I closed my eyes when the door creaked open, pretending to be asleep as my parents entered. Still out, my father murmured. Good, my mother replied. That gives us time to plan how we'll approach this. She's always been difficult about helping Ethan. We'll convince her, my father said confidently. She's never been able to stand up to both of us. They stayed for a few more minutes, discussing strategies to ensure my compliance, before leaving to check on Ethan. Once they were gone, I sat up, hands shaking so badly I could barely tie my shoes. I wasn't going to be their victim anymore. I slipped out of the hospital through a side entrance, took a rideshare home, and spent the night formulating a plan. My parents called repeatedly. I texted that I was staying overnight for observation and would call in the morning. That night, I made a decision. I would help Ethan. He was my brother, after all, but on my terms, and I would finally break free from the emotional stranglehold my parents had maintained for 3 decades. The next morning, I called the hospital directly and scheduled my own donor compatibility testing. Then I called my parents. I'm coming over tonight to discuss Ethan's situation, I said calmly. Oh, Bella, my mother gushed. I knew you'd do the right thing. I'll see you at 7, I replied, ignoring her assumption. I spent the day gathering documents, bank statements showing transfers to Ethan, text messages dismissing my achievements, emails between my parents discussing how to handle me. I also contacted the hospital administrator I'd overheard, requesting a meeting before I saw my family. The administrator, Dr. Nora Phillips, was sympathetic but professional. What you're describing is concerning, she said after I recounted what I'd overheard. Organ donation must be completely voluntary. I'm willing to be tested, I assured her, but I needed you to know what's happening. I appreciate that, she said, making notes in her file. We have protocols to ensure donors aren't being coerced. From now on, your medical information will be completely confidential, even from your family. Armed with this protection, I arrived at my parents' house exactly at 7. They were waiting in the living room, faces solemn but expectant. Where's Ethan? I asked. Still in the hospital, my father replied. They're monitoring his function. I sat across from them, placed my handbag beside me, and folded my hands in my lap. I've already spoken with Dr. Phillips and scheduled my testing. My mother's face lit up. Oh, Bella, I knew... I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I'm doing this for Ethan, not for you, and there are conditions. My father's expression darkened. Conditions? Your brother needs a kidney, not a business negotiation. My body, my conditions, I replied, surprised at how steady my voice remained. First, I want no pressure, no guilt trips, no emotional manipulation. Second, if I'm a match and decide to donate, I make that decision alone, with my doctors. Third, after this, we're going to redefine our family relationship. What does that mean? My mother asked suspiciously. It means I'm done being the family ATM and emotional punching bag. It means I expect the same support and recognition you've always given Ethan. It means we start treating each other with respect. My father stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Your brother is sick, and you're making demands? I'm establishing boundaries, I corrected. Something I should have done years ago. After everything we've done for you, my mother began, tears already forming. Save it, I interrupted. Those tactics don't work anymore. I'll help Ethan because he's my brother and because it's my choice. But our relationship changes now. I left them stunned in their living room, my hands still steady, my resolve intact. For the first time in my life, I'd stood my ground. The next weeks were a blur of medical tests, which confirmed I was a compatible donor. I met with psychologists, social workers, and transplant specialists, all of whom emphasized that I could change my mind at any point. My parents attempted their usual tactics, tearful calls from my mother, stern lectures from my father, but I maintained my boundaries. I spoke with Ethan directly, bypassing our parents entirely. I'll do this for you, I told him during a hospital visit, but things have to change. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, his usual confidence diminished by illness. They told me you're making this difficult. Of course they did. I sighed. Ethan, They were planning to pressure me into donation without even discussing it with me first. I overheard them. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. They're just worried about me. I know, and I'm going to help you. But afterward, I need you to see how they treat me versus how they treat you. I need you to be my ally in changing that. He nodded slowly. I never realized. I knew they favored me, but I didn't think it was that bad. It is, I said simply, and it's time for it to stop. The surgery was scheduled for November 5th. As the date approached, I continued my secret preparations. I contacted Whitfield Legal Group, briefing them on my situation and establishing protections for my assets should things go south. I accelerated several business deals, ensuring Pinnacle Marketing Group would run smoothly during my recovery. I also began documenting every interaction with my parents, creating a record of their behavior, just in case. The night before surgery, my parents insisted on a family dinner. Ethan was feeling better with medication managing his symptoms, though he tired easily. A celebration, my mother called it, though her eyes revealed it was more of a performance, a way to pretend our family wasn't fracturing. Throughout dinner, they performed their usual routine. Ethan's comfort was prioritized, his courage praised, while my donation was treated as expected, almost obligatory. We always knew Bella would step up, my father said, raising a glass of sparkling cider, alcohol prohibited before surgery. Family first, right, Bella? I smiled tightly. Yes, family should always support each other, all members of the family. My mother missed my emphasis entirely. Exactly, like how we're all supporting Ethan through this difficult time. I caught Ethan's eye. He gave a small, acknowledging nod. Perhaps he was finally seeing the dynamic clearly. Surgery day arrived. I was prepped, an IV inserted, consent forms signed. The last thing I remember before anesthesia was my surgeon saying, "We'll take good care of you, Bella." I woke hours later in recovery, groggy and in pain. Through the haze, I heard the surgeon telling my parents the procedure had gone perfectly. My kidney was already functioning in Ethan's body. "She's a hero," the surgeon said. "She did her duty," my father replied. Even through the post-surgical fog, those words cut deep. Recovery was difficult. I'd been warned about the pain, the fatigue, the emotional swings that often follow major surgery. What I hadn't anticipated was how my parents would immediately shift their attention back to Ethan once they knew I was stable. "Ethan's having some adjustment issues with the anti-rejection medications," my mother explained on day 3, when she left my hospital room after just 10 minutes. "He needs me." By day 5, when I was discharged, it was clear nothing had changed. My father picked me up, drove me to my apartment, carried my bag inside, and then checked his watch. "I should get back to the hospital. Ethan's having a tough day." "I just had major surgery," I reminded him. "You're home now," he replied, as if that solved everything. "Call if you need anything." The next week was illuminating. Friends from work brought meals, checked on me, helped with basic tasks. My boss sent flowers and insisted I take an additional 2 weeks beyond my medical leave. "Your health comes first," she said. My parents called daily to update me on Ethan's progress. My mother visited twice, spending most of both visits on her phone, texting updates to family members about Ethan. Neither asked how I was managing alone after donating an organ. By the time Ethan was discharged, 2 weeks after the transplant, I had recovered enough to see the situation with perfect clarity. Nothing was going to change. In their eyes, my sacrifice was simply expected, while Ethan's recovery was miraculous. It was time for phase 2 of my plan. Ethan's birthday was November 12th, and my parents had booked the Crystal Ballroom at the Belmont Plaza for a combination birthday recovery celebration. Over 100 guests were invited: family, friends, Ethan's business associates, even his doctors. I was invited as an afterthought. "Of course you should come, Bella," my mother said. "People will want to thank you." I RSVP'd affirmatively and began my preparations. The night of the party, I arrived 30 minutes late, a calculated decision to ensure everyone would be present. I wore a custom-tailored emerald dress that accentuated my still slender frame. Despite having lost weight during recovery, my hair was professionally styled, my makeup flawless. For perhaps the first time in my life, I dressed to be seen. The ballroom fell quiet as I entered. My mother hurried over, smile fixed but eyes concerned. "Bella, you look different," she said, taking in my appearance. "Are you feeling all right?" "Never better," I replied. "Is the setup ready for Ethan's toast?" "Yes, in about 20 minutes. Your father will introduce him. Then the doctor will say a few words, and then Ethan will thank everyone." "Perfect," I said. "I have a few slides to add to the presentation. A surprise." Before she could protest, I moved toward the audiovisual technician, handed him a USB drive, and gave specific instructions. He nodded, accustomed to last-minute changes at such events. I circulated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes with gracious smiles. Many guests seemed surprised by my poise, my confidence. They were used to overlooking me. At 8:30, my father clinked his glass for attention and began his speech, praising Ethan's courage, his positive attitude, his determination. He mentioned me in passing, and of course, we're grateful to Bella for her contribution, before returning to Ethan's inspiring recovery. The doctor spoke next, explaining the medical miracle of transplantation, though she at least gave me proper credit as the donor who made it possible. Then it was Ethan's turn. He rose shakily, still recovering, and began to thank everyone for their support. I watched him carefully, noticing how his eyes darted to me repeatedly, a new uncertainty in his expression. "And most of all," he said finally, "I need to thank my sister, Bella, without whom I literally wouldn't be standing here today." That was my cue. I moved to the front of the room, taking a place beside Ethan at the microphone. "Thank you, Ethan," I said, squeezing his hand. "I was happy to help. Family should always support each other, all members of the family, equally." I turned to the crowd. "Many of you know me as Ethan's sister, the donor. Some of you barely know me at all. Today, I want to share something important, not just my kidney, but my truth." I nodded to the technician, who switched the display to my presentation. The first slide showed a text conversation between my parents, dated October 2nd, 8:17 p.m. "Linda, the doctor says she's a likely match." Robert, "Good. She'll do it whether she wants to or not." Linda, "Of course she will. We've always been able to make her do what's needed for Ethan." Gasps rippled through the room, my mother's face drained of color. My father stood abruptly. "This is taken out of context," my mother called out. I clicked to the next slide, a bank statement showing years of transfers to Ethan, totaling over $45,000. "This is the financial support I've provided to Ethan over the years," I explained calmly. Support I was happy to give, until I realized it was expected rather than appreciated. Next slide. Emails between my parents discussing how to convince me to fund Ethan's latest venture. Robert, "Bella's being difficult about the money again." Linda, "Remind her how we paid for her college. That usually works." Robert, "If not, I'll tell her Ethan might have to move in with her if this falls through. That'll open her wallet." Ethan stared at the screen, then at our parents, shock evident on his face. "Bella, stop this immediately," my father demanded, striding toward the stage. "I'm almost finished," I replied, clicking to the next slide. The hospital administrator's notes from our meeting, confirming my concerns about coercion. "I donated my kidney voluntarily," I told the stunned audience, "because I love my brother, but I did it despite the manipulation, not because of it, and I'm done being silent about how I've been treated." The final slide appeared, a formal announcement of Pinnacle Marketing Group's expansion, with my photo as founder and CEO, and our impressive client list. "This is who I am," I said. "Not just Ethan's sister, not just a donor. I'm Bella Perez, and I'm successful in my own right. I've built a life and a business that none of you knew about because none of you ever bothered to ask." I turned to my parents. "I love you both, and I love Ethan. But I'm done being the family afterthought. I'm done with the manipulation and the guilt trips and the dismissal of my achievements. From now on, we have a relationship based on mutual respect, or we have no relationship at all." The room was dead silent. My Aunt Margaret stood suddenly, beginning to applaud. Others joined hesitantly, then with growing confidence, until most of the room was applauding. Whether from genuine support or sheer discomfort was hard to tell. My father reached for the microphone. "Bella is obviously still emotional from the surgery. Please, everyone, enjoy the party. We'll sort this family matter privately." "There's nothing to sort," I said clearly. "I've made my decision. The choice is yours now." I stepped down from the stage, my head high, and walked directly out of the ballroom. Behind me, I heard my mother calling my name, my father attempting to regain control of the situation, and a growing murmur of conversation. Outside, in the cool November air, I took my first truly free breath in decades. The aftermath was both better and worse than I'd anticipated. My phone exploded with messages, some supportive, many critical, all shocked. Extended family members I rarely heard from suddenly had opinions about my public tantrum and inappropriate timing. My parents attempted damage control, telling anyone who would listen that I was emotionally unstable from the surgery, that the texts and emails were fabricated, that I had always been jealous of Ethan's success. But facts are stubborn things. The evidence I'd presented was real, and many people had seen it with their own eyes. The hospital administrator confirmed my account when questioned. Bank records don't lie. 2 days after the party, my lawyer delivered letters to my parents and Ethan, outlining terms for any future contact. They included respecting my boundaries, acknowledging past manipulation, and making no financial demands. The letters weren't legally binding, but they set clear expectations. Ethan called first, his voice subdued. "I didn't know," he said, "about the money, about how they treated you. I mean, I knew they favored me, but I didn't realize." "You didn't want to realize," I corrected gently. "It was easier not to see it." "I'm sorry," he said, and it sounded genuine. "What happens now?" "That depends on you," I replied. "I'd like to have a relationship with my brother, a real one, based on mutual respect, but that means seeing me as I am, not as the backup support system Mom and Dad trained me to be." He was quiet for a moment. "I'd like that too. And Bella? Thank you, not just for the kidney, but for making me see the truth." My parents were less receptive. My mother called repeatedly, cycling through tears, anger, and bargaining. My father sent a terse email insisting we meet to resolve this embarrassment. I declined all contact until they acknowledged the issues I'd raised. 3 weeks after the party, my mother appeared at my office. The receptionist, warned in advance about potential unwanted visitors, called me immediately. "She says she won't leave until she sees you," the receptionist explained apologetically. I agreed to 5 minutes. My mother entered my office, taking in the view, the expensive furniture, the awards on the wall, all evidence of the success I'd hidden from her. "You've been lying to us," she said accusingly. "I've been protecting myself," I corrected. "There's a difference. We're your parents. We deserve to know. Like I deserved to know you were planning to pressure me into donation without my consent? Like I deserved recognition for my achievements? Like I deserved equal treatment to Ethan?" She sat heavily in the chair across from my desk. "We always wanted what was best for both of you." "No," I said firmly. "You wanted what was best for Ethan. I was an afterthought. Useful when needed, invisible otherwise." "That's not true." But her protest lacked conviction. "It is true, and until you can acknowledge that, we have nothing more to discuss." She left without resolving anything, but it was a start. The first time she'd sought me out, rather than expecting me to come to her. The holidays approached, traditionally a time of obligatory family gatherings. This year, I declined my parents' invitation, choosing instead to host a small dinner for friends. Ethan came, without our parents, bringing his wife Caroline, who seemed to view me with new respect. "I never knew you were so successful," she admitted over dessert. the way they talked about you. I know, I said. That was by design, theirs and eventually mine. January brought a certified letter from my father's attorney, threatening legal action for defamation and emotional distress. My lawyer responded with our own evidence, plus witness statements from the hospital staff regarding their attempts at coercion. The threat evaporated. February marked 4 months post-transplant. Ethan was recovering well. Medical reports showed my remaining kidney was functioning perfectly. I expanded Pinnacle Marketing Group, acquiring a small competitor and doubling our client base. In March, my father called. "Your mother is having a difficult time," he said without preamble. "She misses you." "I miss her too," I replied truthfully. "But I don't miss how she treated me." People make mistakes, Bella. Decades of systematic favoritism and emotional manipulation aren't mistakes. Dad, they're choices. He was silent for a long moment. "What do you want from us?" "Acknowledgement, apology, change. And if we can't give you that, then we continue as we are now." He hung up without resolving anything. But like my mother's visit, it was progress. He had reached out rather than expecting me to make the first move. April brought an unexpected development. My parents separated. My Aunt Margaret called to tell me. "It's been brewing for months," she explained. "Ever since your confrontation. Your father blames your mother for the situation. She blames him for not fixing it." "I never wanted to break up their marriage," I said, surprised by my own sadness. "You didn't," Margaret assured me. "You just held up a mirror, and they couldn't stand what they saw. That's on them, not you." In May, 6 months after the transplant, I received a letter from my mother, handwritten, 10 pages long. She acknowledged, for the first time, the pattern of favoritism. She described her own upbringing, how she'd been overlooked for her brother, how she'd unconsciously repeated the pattern. She apologized, not with excuses, but with specific recognition of incidents I'd endured. It wasn't perfect. There were still attempts to justify, still blind spots about the depth of the damage, but it was honest, and it was a beginning. I called her and suggested meeting for coffee. We met at a neutral location, both nervous, both determined. "I got your letter," I said once we were seated. "I meant every word," she replied. "I've been seeing a therapist. She's helping me understand what we did to you." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "It's going to take time. Mom, years of patterns don't change overnight." "I know." She nodded. "I'm not asking for everything to go back to how it was. I'm asking for a chance to build something new, something better." We talked for 2 hours, setting boundaries, acknowledging hurts, finding small points of connection. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a foundation. My father took longer. His pride, always his defining characteristic, made acknowledgement difficult. But by summer, even he had begun to reach out, awkwardly, with practical offers rather than emotional openness. But it was his way of trying. Ethan and I developed a new relationship, one between equals. He began to succeed on his own merits, without the safety net of parental favoritism. We discovered we actually liked each other when the dysfunctional family dynamic was removed. As for me, I stepped fully into my power. Pinnacle Marketing Group thrived. Expanding to Seattle with a second office, I bought a beautiful home overlooking the city, traveled when I wanted, and built relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I dated occasionally, though I was in no rush. My focus was on healing, on building the life I wanted, on learning who Bella Perez really was outside of the role I'd been assigned. A year after the transplant, I hosted a dinner party at my new home. My mother came, bringing a homemade cake. My father arrived separately, with an expensive bottle of wine. Ethan and Caroline brought photos from their recent vacation. Friends from work mingled with my business associates, creating a vibrant mix of my past and present. As I looked around my dining room, seeing the life I'd created, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been painful, the confrontation traumatic, but the outcome was worth it. I'd lost a kidney but gained myself. I caught my reflection in the window. recognizing the confident woman I'd become, no longer the overlooked daughter, the reliable backup, the family ATM, just Bella, whole and free, on her own terms. I raised my glass in a silent toast to that woman. She'd been inside me all along, waiting for the courage to emerge. It had taken a betrayal to find her, but now that I had, I was never letting her go again. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't the public confrontation or the exposure of my parents' manipulation. It was living well, on my own terms, no longer defined by their expectations or limitations. It was the simple, powerful freedom of being exactly who I was meant to be. I survived their betrayal. Now, I thrived on my terms.